Chapter 1. The verdict at Storm Peak. The western blizzard howled wildly outside the rough stone walls of the Storm Crest Pack, scattering freezing snowflakes over the execution square. The place exuded the barren and impenetrable aura of a mountain fortress at Storm Peak, with rusty oak scaffolds and the clanking sound of iron chains clashing in the cold wind. Surrounding the castle were ancient pine forests covered in ice and snow, standing steep on the treacherous cliffs. The rough black granite pillars, clinging with moss and ice, stood towering under the flickering light of pine oil torches. Hundreds of wolf warriors surrounded the area, their eyes burning with a wild nature full of disdain. Cynthia knelt on the cold snow, her skinny hands tightly locked by the dark iron shackles weighing heavily on her bleeding wrists. She was originally the outstanding lead sentinel and cartographer of the Storm Crest Pack. With the ability to control wind energy and the peak tactical map-drawing intellect, she had spent hundreds of long nights under the wax candlelight to measure and sketch the impenetrable border defense lines. She was taught by the gentle former Luna since childhood. She was like a second mother, who taught her how to listen to the howling wind to feel the terrain. Cynthia used wind tracking spells to measure the coordinates 4580 and 4212 of the Whispering Pass, and meticulously sketched them on the parchment. She even delicately drew a hidden signature mark in the bottom corner of the defense map. Her strategic maps were the defense backbone, protecting the entire pack against enemy attacks. But today, she stood here to endure the utmost humiliation from the ones she once saved their lives. Many elders standing in the crowd, who were once led by her troops to be rescued from the rogue ambushes, now only stood silently with their heads bowed, betraying their loyalty to her because of prejudice. Standing towering in front of her was Alpha Keith, the young leader, the one who always envied the respect the warriors had for her military talent. He exuded a heavy, greedy alpha scent and wore a thick, rough fur cloak, his alpha eyes burning with cruelty and despicable jealousy looking down at the small girl. Beside him, Camila, a wicked female wolf who always craved the pack Luna position, wore a gorgeous red silk dress embroidered with gold threads, leaning her head on Keith's shoulder with a triumphant and malicious smile. He raised the torn border defense map high before the entire pack, his deep voice carrying the ultimate oppressive power. Warriors of the Stormcrest Pack. Today, I, Alpha Keith, declare the cancellation of the engagement and the rejection of Cynthia before the revered moon goddess. The clear evidence of treason has been found on a killed rogue wolf. The border defense map was leaked, causing our entire eastern borderline to be ambushed unexpectedly, leading to a brutally slaughtered Black Guard platoon. This map fragment was sealed with Cynthia's own personal wax seal. She sold out the pack in exchange for gold and silver from the rogues beyond the wild border. Cynthia held her head high, her hazel eyes blazing with an indomitable proud fire. She looked straight into Keith's eyes and raised her firm voice to defend herself. I am no traitor. Nor did I leak the defense map to the rogues. The eastern defense map was strictly guarded by me in the secret room. Only I and you, Alpha Keith, had the access key. The seal on that map fragment is completely forged. You are the true sinners who sold information to the rogues in exchange for political power at the border, then shifted that despicable treason crime onto my head to silence me. Camila let out an eerie laugh, stepping beside Cynthia, bending low to whisper into her ear with a highly triumphant look. Oh, Sister Cynthia, stop trying to resist. The Eastern Defense Map has been completely leaked, and your fake seal was perfectly crafted with the bronze wax mold that I secretly used soft clay to copy the mold, and poured molten lead to cast a replica from your office. The Stormcrest Pack Luna position belongs only to me. You are just a despicable traitor who will be buried under the freezing ice ravine. Keith stood on the large stone throne, his face furious for having his plot exposed. He swung his wolf leather whip, lashing hard on Cynthia's back, creating a fresh red bleeding gash on her torn woolen sweater. He roared cruelly, "Shut your mouth, you filthy little traitor. The words of a traitor have no value before the pack law. Guards, make this girl crawl along the granite square, strip off all her military iron armor and commander insignia. I don't want to see her shadow in the Stormcrest Pack territory anymore." 2 Stormcrest guards rushed over, violently kicking hard at Cynthia's skinny shoulder, forcing her to collapse onto the mud and cold snow. They ripped off her silver-lined warrior cloak, the symbol of her glorious military exploits, then dragged her along the freezing cold stone steps, clinging with horse manure and slush. The surrounding crowd cheered excitedly, throwing sharp rocks, sheep bones, and half-burnt firewood at the small girl. Cynthia bit her lip tight until it bled to endure the piercing pain. But Keith still didn't stop. To prevent her from having the chance to explain or cry for justice before the Pack Alliance, he pulled out the pitch-black storm iron bind shackles, a dark artifact specially used to tightly lock the flow of wind energy and the wolf strength of the sinner. Engraved on the shackles were dark curse words, radiating a freezing cold curse aura. He violently stepped forward, twisted her arms behind her back, and tightly locked the storm iron bind shackles around her bleeding wrists. Right when the iron shackles slammed shut, dark energy threads instantly shot out, tightly wrapping around the blood vessels on her wrists. A bone-piercing pain ran along her nervous system, making Cynthia gasp for air with difficulty. The natural wind energy flow and the wolf-wild nature in her body were instantly frozen, turning as gray as ashes under the vicious sealing power. She completely lost her combat strength, becoming as weak as a normal human. The giant iron gate of the Stormcrest pack rumbled open. Cynthia was thrown straight down into the freezing cold snow carpet of the frozen ravine. The howling blizzard swallowed her lonely shadow, but her eyes still burned brightly with an unyielding will and an immortal determination for revenge. She knelt under the cold snow, promising herself to survive to claim back this blood debt 100-fold, decipher all the treason evidence to save her honor, and expose the despicable faces of Keith and Camilla before the entire alliance. Chapter 2. The encounter in the ice forest. The frozen ravine was a barren wilderness where wild blizzards howled all year round, where the scrawny black ancient pine branches covered in ice stood steep like demon claws. The cold northern wind blew through the narrow, rough granite crevices, creating groaning and screaming sounds like the cries of resentful souls. Any wolf or warrior without adequate protective power would have their blood frozen in their veins by the cold after just one night. Every step Cynthia took left bleeding footprints that were quickly filled by the snow. However, with the bravery of a lead sentinel and cartographer, Cynthia knew clearly every cave, every hidden side passage behind the rough granite cliffs to hide. Although the storm iron bind shackles were sealing all her wolf wild nature and wind energy, she still used her practical knowledge and the terrain map network deeply engraved in her mind to survive. She gathered broken dry pine branches to stack into a thin cushion to block the cold from the rough stone ground, temporarily chewing bitter herbal roots to maintain her vitality. Every night she curled up under an ancient pine tree, warming her numb hands by rubbing them together. Even though her body was freezing cold, the burning will demanding justice of a resilient sentinel commander did not allow her to collapse before the cold storm. On a night of fierce wild border snowfall, while Cynthia was collecting dry firewood, a ragged rogue patrol squad suddenly rushed out from the bushes to surround her. They growled with a wild, ravenous nature, their sharp fangs dripping black smoke drool onto the white snow. "Ah, female wolf exiled by the pack. Look at those handcuffs, turns out it's a little traitor. Catch her, we will have a wonderful feast in this cold stone valley." Although her wild nature was sealed, Cynthia was not panicked. She tightly grasped the rusty short sword picked up from the ground, her sharp eyes observing the opponent's advancing direction. She used agile combat footwork to dodge the claws of the leading one. She knew she couldn't engage in a physical strength duel with them, while in a sealed state, so she quick-wittedly applied the tactic of utilizing the thick snow terrain. She dodged the vicious pounce, running quickly towards the dangerous rough cliff. She climbed fast onto a low-hanging old pine branch, waiting for the pursuing rogue squad to gather right underneath. With absolute precision, she stepped hard on a large firewood branch supporting a giant mass of snow and rocks at the edge of the ravine. Crash! A small snow and rock avalanche instantly collapsed like a waterfall, burying the patrol rogue squad, making them collapse, groaning and gasping for air under the cold snow. Cynthia brushed the snow off her body, jumped down to the ground gently, and tightly gripped the rusty short sword, continuing deep into the pine forest. Suddenly, from the gray stone valley echoed an ultimate alpha oppressive roar that shook the large pine branches. Cynthia rushed over, hiding behind a large rough rock. She was astonished to see Alaric, the great lichen king of the frost-gripped fortress, fighting alone against dozens of leading rogues. The black iron greatsword in his hands swung sharp slashes, cutting 2 rogues in half in the blink of an eye. However, right when the last rogue fell, Alaric suddenly trembled violently, The once cold ash-gray eyes of the Wolf King suddenly flared with blood-red streaks, then were quickly covered by a freezing blue ice layer. He was suffering a riot outbreak due to the frozen soul curse, the dark curse that had devastated his body for 10 years every cold winter night, causing his body to gradually freeze completely from the heart outward. The crisp cracking sounds of ice breaking emanated from his veins. His chest heaved and contracted. The snow and ice layer quickly crept all over his black iron armor and muscular flesh, forcing the Wolf King to collapse onto the cold snow. Cynthia immediately realized the critical situation. Although the storm iron-bound shackles on her wrists were suffocating her energy, the instinct of a commander warrior did not allow her to abandon an ally against death. She rushed out from her hiding spot, using all her strength to drag Alaric's giant black iron-armored body into a nearby rough stone cave to avoid the wildly howling blizzard. In the dark stone cave, Alaric was gradually falling unconscious, his breath steaming freezing cold, his skin as cold as ice. Cynthia quick-wittedly collected storm grass growing around the cliff, a type of grass that absorbs cold dew but contains warm essential oil when crushed. She used a flint to strike the storm grass hard, creating a small warming fire emitting a gentle fragrant smell. Noticing that Alaric's temperature continued to drop to a life-threatening level, Cynthia took off her fur cloak, pressing her body against his muscular chest. The blood-containing natural wind energy, though sealed, which inherently possessed the warmth of the howling wind, began to react directly with Alaric's freezing wild nature. The natural warmth from her body was like a warm breeze blowing away the ice layer sealing his heart. Alaric's flesh began to radiate steaming warm mist as his body temperature was pulled back. Alaric groaned softly, his ultimate wolf wild nature unconsciously soothing under the pure warmth and the laurel scent radiating from her. The blue ice layer on his body slowly melted, the popping blue ice veins on Alaric's body subsided, bringing him back to a miraculously peaceful conscious state. Alaric woke up and opened his eyes, his ash-gray eyes shining with an astonished wild nature, when seeing the small girl hugging him to keep him warm. The contact between the two bodies created a scorching electric current running along both of their spines. The fated mate bond exploded fiercely like a fire burning the veins of both. The scorching electric current running along his spine made Alaric instantly realize that this was the fated mate the moon goddess had reserved specifically for him, the only one who could warm his freezing soul. Alaric immediately sat up, lifting Cynthia's skinny shoulder. He saw the storm iron-bound shackles tightly locking her wrists, instantly recognizing the insignia of the Stormcrest pack. The ash-gray eyes of the Wolf King narrowed slightly with power. "Who are you? Why do you wear the Stormcrest treason storm iron-bound shackles and save me in this freezing place?" Cynthia stood straight, her proud hazel eyes not avoiding him at all. "I am Cynthia, the former lead sentinel of Stormcrest. I was framed for treason by Alpha Keith and Camilla and exiled here." Alaric looked deep into her resilient eyes, feeling the proud wild nature and honor of a true warrior, not a cowardly traitor. He took off his giant black snow wolf royal cloak and draped it over the small girl, lifting her into his arms with his firm, muscular arms. "They rejected a great cartographer, forced you to wear shackles, and framed you for treason? What cowardly fools. Even when you are temporarily sealed, your proud wild nature still surpasses any despicable alpha. Starting from today, you are the fated mate of this northern Lichen King. Frostgrip Fortress will open its gates to welcome you, and I will together with you decipher the treason evidence to reclaim your honor." Alaric strode proudly on the freezing northern snow carpet, cherishing the small girl in his muscular chest. The Black Guard warriors following behind howled long and resonantly in unison to welcome their future Luna. Chapter 3: The Challenge at Frostgrip Fortress. The Frostgrip Fortress stood towering on the freezing northern rocky peak, surrounded by thick, rough black granite walls and thousands of sharp iron spikes. This place was the supreme power center of the northern Lichen King, where the Black Guard pack carefully guarded every side passage day and night. When Alaric carried Cynthia through the giant arched gate made of black granite, the howling blizzard wind shrieked continuously, as if wanting to freeze all living creatures. The city walls covered with green snow moss stood towering. Below, the castle courtyard was paved with rough gravel and coal ash to prevent slipping. The black iron-armored warriors stood guard along the walkway, their curious wild eyes focused on the small girl in the king's muscular chest. The fragrant beeswax fire burned brightly along the large castle corridor, bringing warmth to dispel the bone-piercing cold of the wild border. The next day, when Cynthia was brought to the royal castle by Alaric, the whispering gossip of the black iron-armored blackguard warriors echoed incessantly throughout the rough stone training ground. They did not submit to a female wolf framed for treason being allowed to stand beside their supreme lichen king. They considered her a wolfless weakling, someone bringing bad omens to the fortress. They murmured softly, "She is the one who leaked the Stormcrest defense map. If such a despicable traitor is allowed to access our military plans, she will definitely sell out Frostgrip to the rogues out in the wild. We cannot trust her." The head trainer of the Royal Guard, General Kale, stepped up before Alaric, loudly challenging with wild nature. "Great King, our castle worships battle strength and practical tactical intellect. We cannot accept someone bearing the title of traitor to be a military advisor, or stand beside your stone throne. The intellect of a traitor only brings dirty schemes to destroy our army from the inside. If she truly has the commander's bravery as rumored, let her duel me on the supreme tactical sand table of the castle. If she loses, she must be thrown into the dungeon as a spy." The Blackguard warriors surrounding the great hall simultaneously banged their iron shields loudly to show their agreement. They wanted to strip bare Cynthia's face, proving she was just a coward using dirty schemes. Alaric sat on the large stone throne covered with gray bear skin, his sharp face pensive and extremely majestic. He was about to raise his voice using supreme oppressive power to suppress and protect her, but Cynthia stepped up herself. She looked straight into Kale's eyes, her voice clear, firm. "Do you think the storm iron bind shackles on my wrists can tightly lock my tactical intellect? General Kale? A true warrior fights not only with muscles but with a strategic brain. I accept this sand table duel to prove I deserve to stand here." Cynthia stepped towards the giant stone table containing the military sand table, made of volcanic black rough sand in the center of the great hall. The sand table recreated the entire treacherous mountainous terrain and the defense lines of the northern border, with oak wooden army models representing infantry and heavy cavalry. General Kale chose the attacking side with overwhelming numbers, using the heavy cavalry blitz tactic combined with an armored infantry regiment to sweep rapidly. He moved the wooden statue split into two attacking prongs, thrusting deep straight into Cynthia's formation center, in an attempt to divide and destroy her forces. Cynthia remained extremely calm, her hazel eyes quickly swept over the elevations and slopes of the sand table. Thanks to the experience of drawing border maps for many years, she recognized a fatal flaw in Kale's advancing formation: the narrow terrain of the Greystone Valley prone to landslides. Although the wind energy was locked by the iron shackles, Cynthia still issued troop deployment orders as fast as lightning on the sand table. She did not defend directly, but proactively threw open the center line, pretending to reveal a large defensive gap. Kale immediately ordered the armored infantry regiment to advance and occupy it. But that was exactly her trust. She executed the ghost maneuver tactic, pretending to retreat all the vanguard forces deep into the heart of the ravine, luring Kale's main formation to advance deep into the ambush area. She used a small twig to lightly brush the rough sand, forcing all the opponent's heavy cavalry into a single narrow passage surrounded by steep cliffs. When all of Kale's main forces had fallen into the narrow ravine, Cynthia smiled gently, pushing the defensive wooden statue to block the opponent's rear escape route. At the same time, she pointed out the trigger point for the rough stone landslide trap from the top of the cliff. "All your heavy cavalry have been cornered into a dead-end ravine. I only need to use a small force to detonate the rough rocks on the cliff. The rockslide will bury your entire main regiment before you even have time to shift into your combat wolf forms." General Kale was violently shocked, staring blankly at the sand table. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He realized all his advancing routes had been accurately predicted by Cynthia and turned into death traps with no escape. The victory belonged to Cynthia completely convincingly, with a 3-to-1 troop strength ratio disadvantage. The entire great hall instantly fell dead silent. The Blackguard warriors were shocked and amazed by the peak tactical intellect of the girl with sealed powers. They began to murmur in admiration. She really is a genius. Defeating General Kale with such weak troop strength is unprecedented. General Kale knelt on one knee onto the freezing stone steps, bowing his head to apologize with utmost respect. "Your tactical intellect is truly superior. I was disrespectful and withdraw my challenge. You deserve to be the lead cartographer and supreme military advisor of the Frostgrip Fortress." Hundreds of warriors simultaneously banged their iron shields loudly to welcome their new supreme advisor. Alaric stepped down from the stone throne, his ash-gray eyes overflowing with pride looking at his fated mate. He gently draped the black snow wolf royal cloak back onto her skinny shoulders, his deep, warm voice echoing, "Cynthia did very well. She has proven her honor and bravery with peak military intellect. Starting from today, anyone who dares to doubt her loyalty is doubting the judgment of the great Lycan King." Cynthia smiled proudly. She knew she had taken a solid step in affirming her true strength in the new pack, but the real battle to expose the true traitor still lay ahead. Chapter 4. The Pain Under the Ice Ring. The royal bedroom reserved for Cynthia at Frostgrip Fortress was a giant room filled with warm wax candlelight. Crimson velvet curtains concealed the freezing stone walls. The rough stone floor was covered with soft and warm white bear skins. The magical fireplace placed in the corner of the room radiated a gentle warmth that dispelled the wildly howling blizzard outside the border. Cynthia sat huddled on the large stone bed, her hazel eyes staring at the pile of military maps scattered on the floor. She still felt suffocated and anxious about Alaric's royal status. Alaric strode into the room with light steps to avoid disturbing her. The Northern King had shed the heavy iron armor layer, wearing only a loose black silk shirt that accentuated his muscular chest crisscrossed with battle scars. His ash-gray eyes softened upon seeing the small girl huddled on the stone bed. He sat down in the empty space beside her, keeping a polite distance to avoid making her feel oppressed under his royal oppressive power. Cynthia looked up at him, her voice soft but containing much anxiety. "Alaric, I appreciate your warm care. But I still fear for your position before the High Council. I am someone exiled from the Stormcrest Pact, considered a traitor. Furthermore, my wind energy is being sealed by these storm iron bind shackles. Please give me more time to figure out how to break these shackles myself and decipher the treason evidence before accepting your fated claiming bite. I do not want your dynasty to be smeared before the entire West." Alaric narrowed his eyes with power, his heart overflowing with immense sorrow for the injuries Cynthia had to endure. He gently placed his giant hand on her shoulder to serve as the firmest support. "Cynthia, I respect all your choices. I will not hastily sink the fated claiming bite into your neck until you are truly ready and trust me. During this time, you are free to use the Royal Military Library to study ancient records and analyze the defense maps. I swear to protect you against any prejudice. My honor does not depend on outdated prejudices." The absolute respect of the Wolf King made Cynthia gently lean her head against his broad chest. The blood containing her natural howling wind wild nature, though sealed, radiated a gentle warmth that soothed the freezing wild nature rioting due to Alaric's frozen soul curse, creating a perfect balance along the veins of both. In the following days, Cynthia spent most of her time in the giant fortress library. Amidst the thick stacks of parchment and ancient military maps covered in thick dust, filled with the smell of old decaying paper, she used a specialized bronze map-drawing compass to meticulously measure. She flipped through each page of the leaked border military map that she had memorized in her head. When carefully analyzing the coordinate data, her hazel eyes suddenly flashed with astonishing realization. She discovered a shocking truth. The leaked defense map fragment was originally a decoy map, drawn by her own hands to test the spy system within the Stormcrest Pact. On this map, she had intentionally drawn the actual coordinates of the Whispering Pass incorrectly by about 2 miles to the west. If the rogue army attacked based on this map, they would throw themselves into a dead-end valley filled with sharp stone spikes. By deciphering this coordinate error, Cynthia realized the rogues were preparing to gather a large force to launch a surprise attack on the vital supply line of the entire alliance at the Whispering Pass. Keith and Camila had unintentionally leaked this fake map to the rogues, proving they were completely the information-selling traitors. Cynthia quickly rewrote the deciphering report. Right at that moment, an extreme blizzard hit the fortress. Alaric's frozen soul curse suddenly erupted fiercely. He collapsed right in the office, his body freezing rapidly, a thick blue ice layer covering his entire body, his breath fading weakly. The healers of the royal castle hurriedly brought scorching firestones to place directly on his body to melt the ice. When Cynthia stepped in, she shouted to stop them. "Stop! Do not apply firestones directly. The ice of the curse constricts all blood vessels. If you directly apply red-hot firestones, the extreme heat from sudden contact will cause extreme thermal shock, destroying the entire circulatory system, bursting the blood vessels, and causing the king's heart to stop beating instantly. We must use windgrass to massage slowly to release the cold air. The head healer roared angrily. You are a filthy traitor, intending to stop me to murder the king? Guards, kick her out. 2 warriors immediately rushed over, pushing hard on Cynthia's shoulder, forcing her to collapse onto the freezing rough stone floor. Cynthia struggled to stand up, her eyes blazing with determination. She quickly grabbed a piece of frozen venison from the castle kitchen tray, placing the red-hot firestone directly onto it to make a visual experiment in front of everyone. Sizzle! The piece of venison was instantly scorched, blistered, and became blackly necrotic in the blink of an eye due to the sudden temperature change. The ice layer surrounding the meat fibers boiled fiercely, then shattered, crushing the entire meat cell structure. Next, she took crushed windgrass, gently applying it to a frozen snowflake. The flour slowly thawed and became fresh again without being crushed. The head healer and the royal warriors stood dead still, their faces turning pale gray with horror. If they placed the firestones on Alaric's body, the consequences would indeed be unimaginable. We were wrong, please save the king. The head healer bowed his head, trembling. Cynthia quickly used the crushed windgrass combined with the warmth from her hands, massaging gently along Alaric's meridians. Under the effect of the warm windgrass therapy, Alaric's snow-wolf wild nature moaned softly in the subconscious. The blue ice layer slowly disintegrated. Alaric's body became rosy again, his breathing stabilized. Alaric woke up, his ash-gray eyes filled with immense gratitude looking at his fated mate. The warmth from Cynthia's love and tactical intellect had spread throughout Frostgrip Fortress, making the entire Blackguard warriors hold deep admiration and absolute trust. She had proven that she was not a traitor, but the only key to save their king and their entire alliance. Chapter 5: The Buried Evidence. After saving Alaric from the riot outbreak of the Frozen Soul Curse, Cynthia immediately completed the detailed military report about the decoy map and the coordinate error. She pointed out the exact location that the Pack Alliance needed to ambush to destroy the main rogue squad at the Whispering Pass. However, before she could send this report, the western blizzard hit the fortress. Boom, the giant iron gate of the royal castle rumbled open. Alpha Keith, arrogantly wearing the Alpha cloak, led the Stormcrest pack guards stepping into the great hall. Beside him was Camilla, looking gorgeous in a red silk dress embroidered with gold threads. Supreme Elder Thorn of the High Council came with them, followed by the council's guard regiment, wearing shining silver armor and sharp long spears. They quickly formed a solid shield formation surrounding all the exits of the castle's great hall to prevent any escape attempts. Thorn's face was solemnly cloudy, full of suspicion. Hundreds of iron-armored warriors stood surrounding them, the atmosphere tense to the point of suffocation. Keith stepped up before the supreme stone throne podium, loudly declaring before the entire council and warriors, "Great Lycan King Alaric, today we represent the Supreme Western High Council coming here to demand you hand over the sinner Cynthia, the traitor who leaked the Stormcrest border defense map and fled the exile sentence. We bring the newest evidence, a handwritten confession letter signed by Cynthia and sealed with her own personal bronze wax seal, sent to the rogue squad leader to negotiate the selling price of the border defense information. In the letter, she admitted wanting to shake hands with the rogues to overthrow Stormcrest, establishing an independent wolf pack outside the border. She is the seed of rebellion. Let's hear her confession. I agree to leak the entire eastern border map for you to destroy Stormcrest. In return, you must crown me the supreme leader of the wild. We will together divide the border territory." Elder Thorn turned to ask the neighboring leaders, Alpha Bruce, Alpha Craig, how do you evaluate this accusation? Alpha Bruce stroked his chin, his pensive face full of anxiety, speaking up, Supreme Elder. Treason and leaking the border defense map are the heaviest crimes according to the Pack law. If the Stormcrest borderline is breached, our entire Western Alliance will also be directly threatened. We cannot take this lightly. The crowd of Blackguard warriors began to murmur and gossip with anxiety. They looked at each other in doubt, suspicion rising in their hearts towards Cynthia. They feared that she was truly a dangerous double agent. Camilla cried fake tears, leaning on Keith's shoulder with a pitiful look. That's right, revered king, I am extremely heartbroken when a Pack sister betrayed the family again. She colluded with the rogues, leaking the entire borderline, causing countless warriors to fall. Now she hides in this frost grip to continue carrying out her dark plot. Her presence only brings disaster and war to this castle. Please hand her over to the High Council to be burned alive on the execution scaffold. A traitor like her does not deserve to receive the protection of the royal family. Cynthia stepped out from behind the velvet curtain, her hazels as blazing with an indomitable proud fire. Even though the storm iron bind shackles on her wrists were still limiting her powers, she still stood with her back straight, facing the sharp spearheads without blinking. She raised her firm voice, Keith. Camilla, are you still brazenly lying like this? That handwritten confession letter is completely forged. My personal bronze wax seal was secretly copied by Camilla beforehand to serve your country-selling transactions. The leaked map fragment you brought out to convict me is actually a decoy map drawn by me to lure spies, containing a 2-mile coordinate error at the Whispering Pass. You are the true traitors who leaked this fake map to the rogues. Keith swung his hand to snatch the deciphering report paper from Cynthia's hand, throwing it straight into the fiercely burning magical fireplace. The paper instantly turned into ashes amidst his cold, vicious laughter. The words of a traitor have no value before the pack law. Your decoy map or deciphering whatever are all lies attempting to save your own life. Your forged evidence has turned into dust already. Keith's brazenness made Cynthia extremely frustrated. She wanted to rush up and expose their true faces, but the storm iron bind shackles on her wrists were still sealing all her wind energy, making her unable to utilize her combat strength. Right at that moment, Alaric stepped decisively down the large stone throne steps, his leather boots stomping hard, creating a continuous echoing sound. His giant black iron-armored body stood protecting Cynthia behind his broad muscular back, completely overwhelming Keith in height and imposing manner. The ash-gray eyes of the Wolf King flared with cold, murderous intent full of power. He drew out the sharp obsidian greatsword and stabbed it hard into the rough granite stone steps with a loud clang, his deep, heroic voice echoing throughout the castle's great hall. Keith. Camilla, do you think this Frostgrip fortress is a place where you can freely act recklessly? Cynthia is my fated mate, the future Luna of this dynasty. Anyone who dares to touch a single hair of hers is declaring war with the entire military force of the Northern Lycan King. The ultimate alpha oppressive power radiated like a storm, shaking the large stone pillars, forcing the Stormcrest pack guards to kneel down onto the cold sand in fear. The mate bond connection between Alaric and Cynthia burned strongly, sending out powerful protective waves soothing her frustration. Elder Thorn stepped forward, his strict cold voice not wavering at all. Great King Alaric. Do you want to start a war among the Pack Alliance because of a female wolf bearing the title of traitor shunned by the whole world? The High Council has supreme laws. If you affirm she is innocent, she must face the supreme magic stone trial at tomorrow's court session. If the magic stone turns ash-gray, convicting her as a traitor, she will be deposed, stripped of her wild nature, and burned alive. Even you cannot go against the council's verdict. Cynthia looked at Alaric, seeing his chest slightly contract. A sign showing the frozen soul curse was silently devastating his heart meridian because he exerted too much oppressive power. She knew she couldn't let him suffer damage or drag the fortress into a bloody war because of her. Cynthia stepped up beside Alaric, holding his large cold hand, her eyes blazing with a resilient fighting spirit. Fine. I accept the High Council's magic stone trial. I will prove my own innocence before the entire council myself. Keith, prepare to face your verdict. Alaric looked at his fated mate, his heart full of sorrow and admiration for her iron will. Tomorrow's unjust trial would be the decisive battle for the honor and lives of both under the cold western moonlight. Chapter 6. The trace of fire and wax. Cynthia's office at Frostgrip Fortress was filled with warm wax candlelight and the gentle herbal scent of pine and cypress. The glowing magical fireplace dispelled the bone-piercing cold of the northern blizzard. Unlike female wolves relying on the protection of an alpha, Cynthia did not sit still waiting for the verdict from the High Council. She sat on the oak chair, her hazel eyes highly focused on the wax fragments and the terrain map copies. Her heart beat fast because of an iron determination. She must decipher this entire treason plot herself. Alaric acknowledging her as his fated mate did not mean she would use the royal power to cover up the crime. The honor of a proud lead sentinel and cartographer did not allow her to do that. When Alaric stepped into the room, bringing a warm tray of roasted meat, he quietly observed the small girl engrossed in her work. The woolen cloak draped over her skinny shoulders, but her back was perfectly straight, exuding astonishing resilience. The pitch-black storm iron-bind shackles were still tightly locking her wrists, continuously suffocating the wind energy flow, causing the blue veins to occasionally twitch slightly due to pain. But Cynthia completely ignored the pain, focusing all her attention on the small sand table in front of her. Alaric approached, placing the food tray on the stone table, his deep, warm voice echoing in the quiet space. "Cynthia, the blizzard outside is howling wildly. You should rest. The High Council has sent a message requesting to hold a military trial in 3 days. I have issued an order forbidding anyone to touch you, but the pressure from neighboring packs is increasing day by day. You don't have to shoulder everything yourself. As the Lichen King, I have enough authority to dismiss the accusation of the Stormcrest pack." Cynthia raised her head, her resolute hazel eyes looking straight into the ash-gray eyes of the Wolf King. Despite appreciating his protection, she still decisively shook her head. "Alaric, I am extremely grateful for your protection. But if you use the royal power to pressure the High Council, the alliances will think you are covering for a double agent. Your dynasty will lose its credibility, and my honor will forever be buried under the label of a reliant person. I am a warrior. I must prove my own innocence with undeniable physical evidence. To do that, I need you to grant me permission to go to the Whispering Pass area to investigate the ambush scene." Alaric narrowed his eyes slightly, the royal oppressive power radiating majestically but also filled with anxiety. "The Whispering Pass is currently an extremely dangerous area, filled with remnants of the rogue army and traps. Furthermore, your power is completely sealed by those iron shackles. Going there is no different from stepping into a tiger's den. I do not fight with muscles, King. I fight with intellect and terrain understanding." Cynthia stood up, reaching out to point at the rough sand table. "The defense map fragment that Keith and Camila used to convict me is a decoy map. The coordinates on it were intentionally shifted by me 2 miles to the west. If the rogues attacked according to that map, they definitely fell into a sharp stone valley. I need to go there to collect weapon traces, fragments, and especially the real wax seal they used to forge my signature." Seeing the iron determination burning deep in his mate's eyes, Alaric knew he could not stop her. A strong female wolf like Cynthia needed to spread her wings in her own sky. The Lichen King nodded slightly, pulling out the obsidian greatsword and stabbing it into the granite stone floor with a resounding clang. "Fine, I will dispatch the most elite Blackguard platoon to escort you. And I, as the Lichen King, will go with you. I will not interfere in your investigation, but I will be the firmest shield protecting you from any enemy." Right on that night, under the escort of Alaric and the Blackguard platoon, Cynthia entered the wild area of the Whispering Pass. The north wind shrieked mournfully, carrying thick snow clouds obscuring the vision. The terrain here was treacherous, with sharp cliffs like giant fangs piercing straight into the gray sky. Every step on the snow was heavy, but Cynthia did not falter at all. Even with her wind energy locked, she still maintained the sharp eyes of a lead sentinel, reading every ripple of the snow and the breakage of the dry pine branches. When they entered the deepest ravine 2 miles west of the pass, exactly the shifted coordinate on the decoy map, the scene of a horrific massacre appeared before their eyes. Dozens of rogue corpses were buried under the rock slide and sharp wooden spikes. Their primitive siege engines were shattered into pieces, stuck tight in the narrow passage. The truth was clear. The rogue army had completely fallen into the tactical trap Cynthia had laid out on the fake map. "Excellent, General Kale," the commanding officer of the accompanying Blackguard squad exclaimed in amazement. "They were crushed right at the shifted location you calculated. This proves the leaked map was actually a death trap for them." Cynthia carefully stepped down into the ravine, ignoring the frozen corpses to head towards the dilapidated command tent of the rogues. Inside the tent, mixed in the thick snow and mud, she found a dented iron chest. Using a sharp pine branch, she pried open the chest lid. Her hazel eyes lit up brightly when seeing a crumpled parchment scroll at the bottom of the chest. That was the rest of the transaction letter, containing the forged bronze wax seal. She used silver tweezers to carefully pick up the dark red wax fragment. Under the dim light of the pine oil torch, Cynthia meticulously observed every line on the seal. Although it imitated her storm symbol very closely, the tiny ripples on the wax surface exposed its falsehood. "Look at this," Cynthia pointed out to Alaric, her voice full of confidence and sharpness. "My real sealing wax is mixed with white pine resin to create toughness, and never leaves speckled residue particles. But this seal has fine pale yellow clay particles sunken inside. This is a characteristic soft clay only found in the eastern swamp area, where Camila frequently visits to tend to her poisonous rose garden. She used wet clay to print the mold of my real seal, then poured molten lead in to create a fake mold. But she was too stupid not to completely clean the fine clay particles before pouring the sealing wax. Alaric looked at the small girl before him with eyes full of respect and admiration. Cynthia's intelligence, sharpness, and ability to analyze evidence were as sharp as any greatsword. She didn't need the soul curse or any divine magic to shine. Her strategic intellect was the most ultimate weapon. Invaluable physical evidence, Alaric raised his deep heroic voice, the corner of his lips curling up into a proud smile. With these things, you will crush them at the military trial. Keith and Camila will have no way back. Cynthia carefully stored the wax fragment containing fine clay particles and the parchment scroll into the small iron box. Locking it tight, she held her head high facing the cold northern winds, feeling the weight of the iron shackles seemingly much lighter. The truth was in her hands, and the upcoming military trial would be the battlefield for her to reclaim the honor and freedom of a proud storm wolf. Needing no saving miracle, she would personally tear apart the mask of lies of the traitors with the light of sharp military justice. Chapter 7. The tension before the trial. The following days at Frostgrip Fortress passed in a suffocatingly tense atmosphere. News of the upcoming supreme military trial, to judge Cynthia's treason, quickly spread throughout the Western Alliance. In every corner of the black granite fortress, from the guards' quarters to the rough sand tactical training ground, fierce debating voices echoed everywhere. The iron-armored warriors banged their shields loudly while discussing, divided into two opposing opinions. One half, mainly warriors from the Iron Claw and Stone Mountain packs, firmly believed that Cynthia was a dangerous seed of rebellion that needed to be eliminated immediately to protect the defense line. The other half, especially the Black Guards who had witnessed her military strategy on the military sand table, began to doubt the authenticity of the accusations. The delegation of the High Council, led by Supreme Elder Thorn, had arrived at the fortress under the escort of the heavy cavalry squad wearing shining silver armor. The crescent moon and crossed spear banners fluttered in the northern storm wind. Their appearance did not carry a message of peace, but the weight of the cold and cruel pack law. Elder Thorn, with his deeply wrinkled face containing decades of conservative prejudice, constantly pressured Alaric, demanding the Lycan King maintain an absolute neutral stance and not interfere in the judgment process. Meanwhile, Keith and Camila had also arrived at the castle with an ostentatious delegation. Keith wore an expensive pale silver snow wolf fur cloak, puffing out his chest, arrogantly walking along the corridors, like a winner holding certain victory in his hands. He brought a guard carrying an emerald-studded oak wooden box containing the hard evidence, the forged confession letter he had been touting. Walking beside him, Camila wore a gorgeous gold-embroidered silk dress, deliberately exposing the crescent moon birthmark, actually a fake tattoo using herbal ink on her wrist, trying to attract the attention and pity from the council elders. She constantly complained falsely about the pain of having to witness her sister fall into the despicable path of sin. Amidst the storm of rumors and hostile glares, Cynthia locked herself in the tactical analysis room, isolating herself from all outside disturbances. The room was scattered with parchment scrolls, magnifying glasses, and small chemical reagent bottles. She did not spend time crying or moping, but highly focused on strengthening her defense file. Her skinny hands wearing the heavy storm iron bind shackles moved continuously, carefully extracting solutions from sour herbs to create reagents. Her focus was interrupted when the oak door creaked open. Camila stepped in, her face wearing a highly triumphant fake smile. She looked around the cluttered room of papers, clicking her tongue sarcastically, still trying to struggle in despair. Sister Cynthia, so pitiful. Do you think these few test tubes and this pile of torn scrap paper can save you from the High Council's execution pyre? The entire Western Alliance has seen your red wax seal, bearing the storm insignia on the map that sold out the border. All your efforts now only serve as a joke to the leaders. Cynthia didn't bother to look up, her hands still steadily dropping each drop of herbal solution into the test tube containing fine iron ore. She slowly replied, her voice calm and sharp like a razor blade made of ice and snow. The truly pitiful one is the one who has to use despicable schemes to cover up her incompetence. Camila, Do you think the clay mold you sneaked to create from my office is perfect? Your intellect is as narrow as a dry well. Tomorrow's trial will not judge by fake tears or empty accusations, but by undeniable physical evidence. The smile on Camilla's lips stiffened slightly. She stepped closer to the desk, her cunning eyes glancing over the wax fragment containing fine clay particles that Cynthia was analyzing. Realizing that was a fatal loophole, Camilla angrily intended to raise her hand to knock over the test tube, but Cynthia was as quick as lightning, tightly grabbing her wrist. Even with her wind energy locked, the physical strength of a frontline warrior still far surpassed a delicate female wolf who only knew how to groom herself. She squeezed Camilla's wrist tight, making her grimace in pain. "Don't touch my things with those filthy hands," Cynthia growled, her hazel eyes flashing with the proud murderous aura of a true combat wolf wild nature. "Save your strength for tomorrow, Camilla. When facing the truth before the entire council, your lies will shatter like cheap illusions." Cynthia forcefully threw her hand away, pointing straight to the door. Camilla held her red wrist, stepping back a few steps, her face distorted with anger. She hissed vicious curses. "You will regret this arrogance. The High Council's fire will burn your lying mouth to ashes." Then turned and walked quickly out, slamming the door shut with a loud bang. Silence instantly enveloped the room. Cynthia gently rubbed her wrists tightly constricted by the iron shackles. Breathing out a long sigh, the real tension still lay ahead. She knew that Keith did not solely rely on the fake wax seal. The handwritten confession letter he planned to present tomorrow was undoubtedly also exquisitely forged by him. She needed to find an even bigger loophole. The evening before the trial day, Alaric stepped into her room, bringing a woolen cloak woven from pure white snow sheep wool. He gently draped it over her shoulders, the warmth from his muscular chest transmitting over to help soothe the accumulated tension in her. The Lichen King gently caressed Cynthia's glossy brown hair, his deep, firm voice echoing, "Everything has been prepared for the military trial tomorrow. No superstitious magical rituals will be applied. The council will have to rely on logical arguments and physical evidence as you desire. I will sit on the throne of the supreme judge, and I swear on my royal honor, I will ensure the most fair, transparent trial the West has ever witnessed." Cynthia leaned her head against his chest, feeling the strong, steady heartbeat of the Wolf King. The mate bond between them vibrated with the soothing melodies of absolute trust. She did not need Alaric to abuse his power to save her. She only needed a fair stage where the light of truth was not obscured by power or prejudice. "Thank you, Alaric," Cynthia whispered, her eyes blazing with iron determination. Tomorrow, before the witness of the entire alliance, Keith and Camilla will have to pay the price for their despicable treason. The traces of fire, wax, and ink will speak on my behalf. The blizzard outside still howled unceasingly, but inside Cynthia's heart, a fire of justice and intellect burned strongly, ready to burn all despicable lies in the upcoming fierce military trial. Chapter 8. The Military Trial. The giant Great Hall of Frostgrip Fortress was designed exactly like a miniature ancient Roman Colosseum, with rows of rough black granite stone seats arranged in curved steps surrounding a large semicircular area in the center. The light from giant pine-fat torches illuminated the entire space, sparkling on the silver armors of the Blackguard army standing solemnly along the walls. The atmosphere thickened because of the extreme tension. Hundreds of delegates from the Alliance Pact's weather-beaten warriors, conservative elders, and strict military commanders were fully present, their eyes focused on the center of the great hall. On the highest podium, Alaric sat towering on the royal stone throne covered with pitch-black wolf skin. The long floor-sweeping royal cloak fluttered gently every time he moved. His face was majestic, as cold as a god statue carved from a 1,000-year ice block, assuming the role of the supreme judge of the military trial. Beside him, Elder Thorne sat on the ancient oak chair representing the High Council, his hands tightly gripping the jade-encrusted power scepter, his cloudy face full of strictness and scrutiny. When the heavy oak gate opened, Cynthia stepped in wearing a neat sheepskin warrior outfit, not bothering to wear frail, cumbersome silk dresses. Even though her hands were still tightly locked in front by the pitch-black storm iron bind shackles, her demeanor was still as proud and indomitable as a goddess of war. She strode confidently to the center of the semicircular podium, her hazel eyes sweeping over the leaders without wavering or fear. Standing opposite her on the other side of the podium were Alpha Keith and Camilla, both showing extreme outrage and resentment, constantly whispering curses when seeing her appear. Elder Thorn banged his scepter hard on the stone floor with a loud clang, his dry voice echoing throughout the great hall. The military trial of the Western High Council officially begins. The defendant Cynthia, former lead sentinel of the Stormcrest Pack, is accused of serious treason crimes, colluding with wild rogue forces, leaking the eastern border defense map, leading to a dangerous infiltration threatening the entire alliance. Alpha Keith, present the accusing evidence of the Stormcrest Pack. Keith puffed out his chest and stepped out into the middle of the podium, his loud voice full of authority deliberately drowning out all other sounds. He signaled his subordinate to bring up the emerald-studded oak box, carefully taking out a crumpled parchment scroll and a torn map fragment. He raised the evidence high for the entire council to witness. Revered leaders, the criminal evidence of this traitor is as clear as day. This is the Whispering Pass border defense map, bearing her own personal sealing wax, the unmistakable familiar storm insignia. It was found on the corpse of a rogue in the ambush. Not only that, we also seized a confession letter in her own handwriting, promising to hand over the entire vital supply line to the rogues, in exchange for half of the independent territory. The signature and the wax seal on it prove her undeniable despicability. The entire great hall immediately erupted in angry murmurs. The warriors banged their hands loudly on their bronze shields to show their outrage at the heinous treason. Elder Thorn turned to Cynthia, his steely eyes full of conviction. Defendant Cynthia, do you have any words to defend yourself against this glaring physical evidence? Or will you obediently kneel down and confess your guilt to beg for a merciful death from the High Council? Cynthia smirked slightly, a proud and calm smile soothing the noisy atmosphere. She took a step forward, her clear yet powerful voice echoing, shattering all the loud accusations. I will never kneel before cheap forged evidence fabricated by cowards, Elder Thorn. Alpha Keith said that the leaked map was the most important defense map. Then you all look at that terrain sand table yourselves and examine the military truth. Cynthia pointed her shackled hands straight towards the large rough sand table placed at the corner of the podium. With extremely logical and accurate strategic analyses, she spoke loudly. The Whispering Pass area on the map that Keith touted as a military secret actually had its coordinates intentionally shifted by me 2 miles to the west. That is a decoy map. I designed it as a specialized tactical trap to test the level of information leakage internally. Any army marching according to those shifted coordinates would not enter the pass, but fall straight into a V-shaped sharp stone valley with no escape. And Sir's reality has proven that. Why was the vanguard force of the rogues wiped out cleanly in that exact dead-end stone valley, instead of successfully infiltrating the defense line? Because they foolishly marched according to the exact fake map that the true traitors in the Stormcrest Pack stupidly leaked out, thinking they had grasped our weakness. Cynthia's firm refutation combined with accurate military analyses shocked the entire Great Hall. Alpha Bruce and Alpha Craig, those with extensive experience on the battlefield, suddenly frowned in thought, immediately staring at the evidence map. They realized the clear truth in her words. The actual coordinates were intentionally shifted in a highly strategic manner. Keith's face was drained of all blood. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. He hurriedly roared, "Don't listen to her sophistry. Whether it's a decoy map or a real one, the bright red wax seal bearing the storm insignia and her handwritten signature on it are undeniable hard evidence. The sealing wax is unique. She cannot deny that she personally traded with the rogues." "It is indeed unique," Cynthia replied coldly, her eyes flashing with the murderous aura of military justice. She turned to look at Alaric, nodding slightly. "Supreme Judge, please allow me to present my own physical evidence to prove that that wax seal and that letter are the shabbiest forged goods." Alaric sat with his back straight, his sharp, authoritative eyes glancing towards Keith, his resounding voice echoing like thunder. "The court always respects physical evidence. Defendant Cynthia is allowed to present her refuting arguments." Cynthia slowly took out the small iron box she had brought back from the Whispering Pass. The atmosphere in the great hall was as taut as a bowstring. Camilla stood beside Keith, her complexion suddenly turning deadly pale, her hands beginning to tremble as she realized that the iron box looked frighteningly familiar. The military trial had shifted to a decisive stage, where scientific evidence and tactical logic would tear apart all the lies of the despicable ones. Chapter 9. The truth revealed. The candlelight in the great hall seemed to freeze as Cynthia slowly opened the lid of the small iron box. She used the silver tweezers to carefully pick up the dark red wax fragment she had collected from the rogue command tent at the Whispering Pass. She requested the guards to bring a basin of clear, warm water and a giant magnifying glass made of polished crystal. The absolute confidence radiating from her calm demeanor forced the crowd of warriors to silently watch her every move. Cynthia raised the wax fragment high before the magnifying glass, raising her voice loud and clear, explaining to the entire council leaders. A true sealing wax is mixed with pure boiling white pine resin to create a tough, durable, and extremely smooth texture. Under this magnifying glass, the real wax will not have any lumpy impurities. But look closely at the wax seal on the accusing letter that Keith just brought, and also the wax fragment I obtained from the rogue scene. If you observe carefully, you will see inside that red wax layer, speckled with ultrafine pale yellow sediment particles. Elder Thorne signaled a judge of the High Council to step forward to inspect. The judge squinted through the magnifying glass, a look of astonishment flashing across his face, immediately nodding to confirm, indeed. Inside the wax are mixed very small sediment particles, like sand or fine earth, that has not been filtered carefully. Cynthia smirked slightly, dropping the wax fragment into the basin of warm water. Under the effect of the water temperature, the outer wax layer began to soften, leaving small sediment particles settling down to the bottom of the basin. That is not ordinary sand, but fine clay, a specialized clay used to make casting molds, Cynthia sharply exposed. Only those who want to copy and forge a seal would use wet clay pressed onto the original mold, then pour hot lead or red wax in to create a replica. This fine clay is very difficult to clean completely from a homemade mold, so it accidentally got mixed into the finished wax. Furthermore, this pale yellow fine clay is only uniquely found in the eastern swamp area of the Stormcrest territory, where Camilla frequently visits to tend to her rose garden. The one who forged the wax seal is none other than Camilla. Camilla startled, her face turning pale gray. She panicked and stepped back, hiding her hands behind her back, stammering to defend herself. You don't spout bloody nonsense. Just a few coincidental clay particles and you dare to falsely accuse me? Yellow clay is everywhere. You are making up stories to distract the council. You want more evidence, very well. Cynthia continued coldly, her hazel eyes blazing like fire. She pointed her hand towards the crumpled parchment scroll containing the confession letter. I ask the council's permission to examine the ink quality used to write this shabby confession letter. In the military, the ink for recording secret documents usually uses extract from cedar berries. But this letter is written with an ink having a very characteristic gloss. Cynthia requested a bottle of diluted vinegar solution mixed with herbal acid. She dipped a small brush into the solution, then lightly swiped over the signature strokes at the end of the letter. Sizzle! Immediately the pitch-black ink strokes smoked slightly, bubbling with tiny rust-red bubbles and emitting a metallic smell of iron. Do you see, these handwriting strokes immediately reacted chemically with the herbal acid, Cynthia declared loudly. This is obsidian ink, an extremely expensive ink made from scrap iron ore mixed with soot. In the entire Stormcrest pack, this ink is a luxury item exclusively supplied only for Alpha Keith's office. Where would a low-salary lead sentinel like me get this expensive ink to write a confession letter to the rogues? Obviously, Keith used his own ink to write the letter forging my signature. The glaring chemical and physical evidence made the entire Great Hall erupt in outrage. Alpha Bruce slammed his hand hard on the stone table, roaring loudly, "How disgusting! Such a blatant frame-up, we have been deceived by despicable forged evidence." Keith was completely panicked. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead. He understood that all his cunning tricks had been torn apart under the light of intellect. In his extreme panic, his cruel wild nature erupted. Having no way to deny it, Keith suddenly drew out the short sword hidden in his cloak, frantically lunging straight towards Cynthia, standing right in the middle of the podium, with her hands still tightly locked by the pitch-black shackles. "Die, you damn traitor bitch!" He roared madly, swinging the sword, slashing down to silence her forever. The incident happened so fast that the guards didn't have time to react. However, Cynthia did not flinch at all. Even without magical power or wind energy, the combat instinct of a peak melee warrior still flowed in her veins. She stepped back quickly to avoid the vicious sword tip, simultaneously utilizing Keith's lunging momentum. She raised her wrists wearing the steel-hard storm iron-bind shackles, using it as a physical defensive weapon to block the sword blade directly. Clang, the deafening sound of clashing metal echoed. Keith's sword slashed hard against the black iron surface of the shackles, immediately chipping a large piece. The rebounding force numbed Keith's hand. Not missing the opportunity, Cynthia used masterful martial arts techniques, spinning and launching a vicious spinning kick hitting straight into Keith's elbow, disarming the short sword far away. She used her shoulder to thrust hard into his chin, making him fall backward, collapsing onto the rough stone floor groaning in pain. The crowd gasped in amazement at the exquisite practical combat skills of the girl even though her power was sealed. "Stop," Alaric's thunderous authoritative voice echoed, shaking the entire great hall. The Lycan King drew his giant greatsword, striding decisively down the podium. The supreme alpha oppressive power radiated billowingly like the wrath of a blizzard, forcing the entire Stormcrest pack guards to immediately kneel down in submission. Alaric stepped up, pointing the cold, sharp greatsword tip straight at Keith's throat. His ash-gray eyes flared with bone-chilling cold murderous intent, intentionally using forged evidence to frame a loyal lead sentinel, colluding to leak the military map to the rogues, and blatantly drawing a weapon to attack an unarmed person, right at the military trial. "Keith, your crimes need no more defense," Elder Thorn, his face tightening with anger at the blatant deception of the Stormcrest pack, slammed his power scepter hard on the stone floor to issue the final verdict. "The truth is clear. Physical evidence never lies. Cynthia is completely innocent and an absolutely loyal strategist. I declare the cancellation of all charges against her. Guards, remove the storm iron bind shackles immediately and arrest Keith and Camila at once for the supreme treason crime." Two Blackguard warriors immediately stepped forward. Using the exquisite key retrieved from Keith's subordinate, they inserted it into the magical lock on Cynthia's wrists. Click, a crisp sound echoed. The pitch-black storm iron bind shackles split in two and fell onto the stone floor. At the exact moment the shackles were removed, a powerful wind energy flow, suppressed for so long in Cynthia's body, erupted around like a small whirlwind. The warm wind blew her glossy brown hair, her hazel eyes flashing with the bright silver light of a proud, free, wild nature. She had won not thanks to mercy or royal power, but by her own sharp intellect and unbreakable resilient will. Chapter 10. The Manifesto of the Wind. The military trial closed with extreme astonishment and resounding admiration from the entire Western Alliance. The whole great hall burst into roaring cheers, completely different from the suffocatingly tense silence just a few minutes prior. Keith and Camila, the greedy perpetrators who had once loudly accused others, were now tightly bound by the silver-armored guards of the High Council, with specialized pitch-black iron chains meant for treason criminals. All symbols of glory of the Stormcrest pack on them, from the storm insignia to the silver-lined cloaks, were mercilessly stripped bare, tossed aside on the cold, rough stone floor. Camila's desperate screaming voice echoed as she was dragged down to the dungeon. Keith bowed his head in humiliation before the death sentence for treason. The Stormcrest pack warriors following him stood with their heads bowed, no one daring to speak up to defend them. Inside the large great hall, the heavy melancholy had completely dissipated, making way for a brilliantly joyful atmosphere overflowing with admiration. Elder Thorn, who once held the harshest prejudice against Cynthia, slowly stepped down from the presiding chair. He trembled, leaning on his cane to step forward, slightly bowing his head in apology before the female-led sentinel. "Cynthia, I have lived nearly a century to protect the fairness of the pack law, but I almost let my blind eyes push a great strategist into the execution pyre. On behalf of the Supreme High Council, I send you the most sincere apology. Your intellect has protected this alliance from a devastating disaster." Alpha Bruce of the Iron Claw Pack and Alpha Craig of the Stone Mountain Pack also stepped forward, placing their right hands on their left chests over their hearts, bowing deeply to show the sincere respect of true warriors. "You are a great military strategist, Cynthia," Alpha Bruce spoke, his deep, heroic voice echoing like thunder shaking the stone walls. "The Western Alliance is extremely proud and fortunate to have a brilliant intellect like you protecting the defense line. Your prediction and establishment of the decoy map, directing the rogues straight into the death trap, has saved the lives of thousands of our warriors. If it weren't for your genius brain, the Whispering Pass would have fallen." Hundreds of Black Guard warriors simultaneously banged their sword hilts hard onto their iron shields, creating an epic heroic anthem welcoming the glorious return of the most outstanding lead sentinel. The wind energy in Cynthia's body, after being freed from the pitch-black storm iron bind shackles, flowed freely and intensely in her veins. The warm and vitalizing wind carrying the natural wolf wild nature spread throughout the hall, blowing away the cold remnants of the blizzard outside the wild border. That warmth soothed the pain of the frozen soul curse that once devastated this fortress. Cynthia smiled proudly, responding to the respect with a standard slight military bow rather than the coyness of a gentle lady. Her hazel eyes sparkled with the light of indomitable pride. She didn't need any saving magical miracle, didn't rely on the supernatural strength of the pack to affirm her own worth. Her innocence and honor had been brightly illuminated by the physical evidence, chemical analysis, and peak strategic thinking of an outstanding tactical mind. That evening, Frostgrip Fortress held a grand celebration banquet. The blazing campfires completely dispelled the cold of the frozen ravine region. The Stormcrest and Blackguard warriors, who once held prejudices, now put their arms around each other's shoulders around the fire, singing the song about the storm heroine who rescued the dynasty with her supreme intellect. When the crowd was intoxicated in the joyful and slightly tipsy party at the square below, only Alaric and Cynthia were left standing on the large granite balcony of the top-floor Great Hall. The atmosphere here became magically quiet and sweet, completely isolated from the noisy bustle below. The giant Lichen King, wrapped in a royal cloak woven from pale silver snow wolf fur, strode slowly towards her. The frightening, cold, majestic look of a royal supreme judge had completely given way to extremely gentle ash-gray eyes, overflowing with deep love and absolute admiration for his fated mate. "You did it, Cynthia. You fought like the most outstanding true warrior and achieved the most perfect victory," Alaric whispered softly, his deep, warm voice vibrating deep within his muscular chest, breathing passionate warmth onto her cheek. He reached out his large hand full of heroic battle scars, gently caressing, her glossy brown hair fluttering in the cold wind. "Your sharp intellect and resilient bravery shine brighter than any pine-fat torch ever lit in this fortress. You didn't just clear your own name, but also lit up the entire Western Alliance from the darkness of despicable lies." Cynthia leaned her head, pressing her cheek into his warm, burning palm, her hazel eyes curving into a radiantly happy smile. She wrapped her slender arms around the broad, firm chest of the Wolf King, listening to the strong heartbeat of the royal wild nature. She felt the absolute firmness and safety from the mate bond resonating in the veins of both. No longer having the pitch-black iron shackles weighing heavily on her wrists, no longer having the unjust accusations from narrow-minded jealous ones, her soul was as free as the proud howling wind, he freely soaring on the highest snowy mountain peak. "I could not have won this complete victory without your absolute respect for justice, Alaric," Cynthia gently replied, looking up at the masculine, angular face of the Northern King. "You kept your oath of honor, opposing the pressure of the council to give me a fair stage, where the light of truth could, by itself, completely defeat the darkness of lies." Alaric bent low, his ash-gray eyes darkening with a healthy, intense yet extremely gentle possessive desire. The warmth of pure wind energy from her blended perfectly with his supreme freezing royal wild nature, creating a perfect balance, making all wounds and curses of the past vanish forever. He gently lifted her delicate chin, whispering the most passionate, deepest words of love from the bottom of his heart. "Your honor has been brilliantly washed clean under the light of justice. My dynasty, this fortress, and my entire heart now belong to you forever, the wisest and proudest Luna the West has ever had. Are you ready to receive our eternal fated seal, my warmth and my love?" Cynthia stood on her tiptoes slightly, wrapping her arms around his neck, her soft lips responding with a sweet, passionately deep kiss instead of any answer. The harmony of the two souls made the surrounding temperature seem to rise, completely dispelling the cold of the far north region. Under the sparkling light of the brilliant wax candles, reflecting from the great hall, and the moon goddess moonlight shining down on the balcony, Alaric slowly tilted his head, parting her cloud-like hair. His lips touched the sensitive skin on her neck, placing an extremely cherishing claiming bite that contained a powerfully sovereignty-affirming strength. A brilliant silver magic electric current flashed and exploded, connecting the two warrior souls inseparably forever. The supreme royal bond was completed, deeply engraving the immortal love and unparalleled strength of the Northern Lycan King and his only true Luna. Outside the frost-gripped fortress window, the final blizzard carrying the remnants of a cold winter had gradually dissipated, making way for the first brilliant golden dawn rays shining down on the peaceful pure white valley. The majestic Northern Wolf dynasty officially entered a new era of peace, fairness, and prosperity, led by the unparalleled royal strength of Lycan King Alaric and the great outstanding strategic intellect of Luna Cynthia, the eternal monument of resilience and immortal justice in the hearts of thousands of Western warriors.